Hello, my name is Brad Bodnerchuk, and welcome to the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast, where we discuss everything hospitality, from the food on the plate to the teams that make it happen and the community that drives this industry forward. On this podcast, we sit down and chat with some of the most exciting, inspiring, and innovative minds that make up one of the most dynamic industries that there is today. And today, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by none other than Ned Bell and Jed Grieve. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is a beautiful Vancouver morning this morning.
Perfect.
I was actually surprised. The temperature is quite nice, but it is raining as we sit here at Cook Culture in downtown Vancouver at 377 Howe. Get that right?
Good memory.
There you go, 377 Howe. I want to first say thank you guys so much for making space for me and this podcast and taking time, as it is the most valuable thing we have. So thank you so much, Jed and Ned, for making time for the podcast.
Of course. Thank you.
This is, I think, number 34 or 35 for me, and every podcast up until now, I've led off the interview with the exact same questions. Today, I'm going rogue and going off the board.
Okay.
I'm going to tell a quick story, if I may. For some reason, I remember as a kid in elementary school, we were lined up on what I'll call a stage, for lack of a better term, and stage led down into what was our gymnasium. I'm in line with my class, and the gym teacher, who was a male, and his name was also Brad, my name, was standing in the middle of the gym doing something, putting balls away or whatever. And there was a kid behind me who was kind of trying to, I don't know, stand out a bit. And he yelled, "Hey, Brad," to the teacher. And that was such an interesting thing for us as students, because you don't call teachers by their first names. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you guys, in your workplace, what do people refer to you as? Do they call you Ned? Do they call you Chef? Do they call you Jed? Do they call you Sir? Do they call you Mr. Grieve?
We have two very different workplaces.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Ned works in an environment of order and keeping chaos in order.
Yeah.
And he knows, and he can speak to that better than I do. But for me, it's very much about customer service, mm-hmm. and I'm more front of house,
right,
and Ned's back of house, right?
Right.
And so I'm about very much first names and familiarity as soon as possible, and making a relationship with customers and making sure that my front end staff are ready and prepared to meet people on whatever sort of layer they want to meet.
Right.
We definitely will be formal as need be, depending on the relationship with the customer. Mm-hmm. But we sell and interact in kitchenwares, and we teach. Ned's an educator, and that is very much about inviting somebody into your kitchen, where that's a very casual environment. So for us, it's about the customer interaction, and that's a much more casual place. Ned is in the way in which he has to control a kitchen is probably a different answer.
Right. So if someone comes in, Ned, and they're new, say it's a new line cook, they're like, "Hey, Ned," do you kind of take it? Are you like taken back by that a bit, or do you embrace it?
It's a great question, actually, because one of the things that I always make sure people understand is that my name is Ned, and that is what I would prefer you call me by. But I do work in an industry where chef is chef, and yes, chef is something that we say to each other a lot. Mm-hmm. As I've over the last bunch of years transitioned, not out of the kitchen, but into different roles within the culinary space, within the food and beverage world, advocacy, education, etc. I don't expect anybody to call me chef. In fact, I just feel like that's, as much as I respect our industry and certainly, have come from some extraordinary chefs, and, the journey that I've been on personally comes from those traditional classical mm-hmm. European kitchens where, everybody defers to the chef in often too much of a way. So for me, really, it's about how do we make people feel comfortable in this creative space? How do we make people appreciate the fact that we're all human beings, mm-hmm. Trying to get to the place that we want, which is feeding people great, healthy, delicious food. Mm-hmm. And I think it starts with how you treat each other in the kitchen. And certainly how you treat each other in the kitchen translates into how you treat people in the front of house. And you can call me chef if you want, but my name's Ned.
Right.
I see it very much when watching Ned. I'm an observer of Ned, and I find his career fascinating, and I love it when it intertwines with mine. I see it in his peers and when he's working with others that call him chef out of a great respect.
Correct.
He has done more than any chef I've ever met, and many out of any chef in his peer group here in Vancouver, for his advocacy. And I see when he's working in a special event or in our kitchens here, the cooks or chefs that are with him, they respect him by calling him chef.
It's like Trevor Bird. I mean, Trevor never calls me Ned. He always calls me chef.
Yeah.
Shout out to Trevor.
Just kidding, Trevor.
Yeah. but truthfully, when I do see that, and I see it all the time, they're like, "Yes, chef. What can I do?" They're there to help him and be there for him because of the respect.
I think it's a junior. It's a position where somebody in the kitchen today is the boss. Right.
Correct.
Somebody, and that could be, it could even be, a multi-chef dinner where you have a bunch of different chefs cooking together. At that moment when it's that chef's turn, I think you refer to them as chef. But just so everybody knows, we're here at Cook Culture. Jed has this amazing place called Bliss Cafe, and there's a huge lineup at the front door, a lot of smoothies being made as we speak.
Yeah,
so
we have a small vegan cafe that's part of the kitchen and the cooking school and the retail environment. So we're blending throughout this podcast.
I hear a lot of blending.
Alita is my sound engineer, and she's going to love us for the...
exactly. Good luck, Alita.
Yeah, Alita, you know what? You're very talented. You can do it.
Hey, so something that I find really interesting about the chef thing, and actually a guy called Khalil Akhtar, who is the CBC columnist for syndicated across the country.
Right.
Khalil's an amazing guy and brilliant guy, and has really likes to dissect things. And he did this quite a while ago, where he came to me, talked to me a little bit about it, and many other people, and he's like, "Okay, well, what's the difference between a chef and a cook?"
Right.
And that I found really interesting, because it is such a funny thing where people are like, "Oh, I want to cook like a chef," or I do this and I'm like a chef. It's like, and I find it's interesting that most people, especially us laymen's, don't realize how disrespectful it is to call somebody who's just, in one position actually the chef, and what it's taken for those chefs to become chefs, and what a cook does in the kitchen and what a chef does in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's funny too, though. Honestly, I am a cook. And I'm always going to be a cook. I'm a blue collar worker. I'm a tradesperson.
Exactly.
I just don't care, as long as you're respecting the environment and the space that we're in at that moment. You can call me whatever you want, as long as we're putting the best foot forward, the best food on the plate, and having a good time doing it.
And that was his point in that, is that they're all cooks. Right, you're
exactly.
a chef, you're
at the
cook,
root.
You're a sous chef. Yeah, at the root, everybody's a cook, right?
Yeah.
And where is that when you're like, oh yeah, that's the chef? It's like, well, what does that really mean?
Right.
It's always interesting, and that layer of respect within the kitchen, which is so important for guys like Ned and many others in Vancouver that have humped it out to get to that level, and what the difference between them is.
Something I recognized, and I quietly observed it when I first arrived here at Cook Culture this morning, as I was setting up, you were dealing with staff. And I thought you were dealing with staff in a very eloquent way. And I was not taken aback, but I was a bit surprised, because not knowing a lot about you, but the demands you have on you as an owner of businesses and a father and a partner and all those things, most people could have, and again, I don't know the situation, we can get into it if you want, but it seemed like you stepped up and made everyone feel extremely comfortable, and you are here to help them as the owner of the business. And that to me is so inspiring to see as a leader. And I'm wondering, Ned, do you find you're able to do that as well in a kitchen, or are the demands on you at a certain time so much that you're just head down doing what you do? And Jed,
I think that we are the glue that holds our teams together. And truthfully, as a parent, as a mentor, educator, business owner or chef, our role is to try and make sure that the team is, putting their best foot forward today. I always try and plant a seed in my boys. I have 3 sons, and make sure the last thing that I say to them in the morning is something incredibly positive and rewarding, and sort of lay that landscape for them for the next 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 hours until I see them next. I think that in the teams that we have, we're working with human beings. These are people. I mean, all of the staff that works at Cook Culture could very easily work in any of the businesses that I work in. They just happen to be working here at this moment in their lives, and respect and proper treatment in our industry hasn't always been the norm.
Correct.
And I think that we need to continue to realize that, gosh, it's difficult to find great people. And you got to take care of them. You got to actually care about what's going on in their lives. Otherwise, why would they care about your business?
True.
Absolutely. They're your representatives. They're your front line. I'm I wish I could talk to every single customer, but I just can't.
Yeah.
We've got, chasing.
I do too. I love that you said that, because I wish that I could speak to every guest that comes in my restaurant. That doesn't mean I want a 60-seat restaurant, and to be working 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
But I really do. Jed and I grew up together, on Vancouver Island, and we're both relatively gregarious guys. We're outgoing, and
Right.
maybe me a little bit more than him, when it comes to the media world. But I love talking to our guests. I love engaging with them, and I always feel like when they get to talk to the owner, the chef, the GM, whoever that person is, that sort of the guider of that business or that place, that the customer always feels like they got that special sauce, that little extra bit of attention.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And so I try my best to empower, people that work with me, and there's nearly 40 of us, to have that feeling. It's like, oh, well, that's what Jed would want me to do.
Right.
Or that's what the company does. Right. And I
Correct.
feel right under that, and so when I engage with people, if they're giving me 100%, then I'm going to treat them with that sort of respect. If they're giving me 60%, it's a different conversation.
Right.
Right. So, and that's what you acknowledged is I'm talking to people that are giving me everything they got. They're here. They're helping us build our business, and I'm going to treat them with respect and understand. There's stresses in their lives. They got things going on, and I need to meet them halfway.
You both mentioned wishing you could speak to every customer.
Yeah.
And I think something you mentioned, Ned, in the taking the time before your boys leave for the day and imparting some wisdom on them and something inspiring and positive. I think we do that. I think we do that as parents and as leaders of businesses and maybe community leaders as well. I think you guys are talking to everyone. You're talking to everyone through your employees, through empowering your staff, through training your staff, and through making them understand the message. Why are we here? What is cook culture? What are we trying to do? Yep. So they might not be able to see Chef Ned come out and talk to every single person that has a plate drop in front of them, but in some way, shape, or form, they're getting your message, whether it be through the actual physical food you're creating or just the staff. And whether it's a beginning of a shift where you have your little chit chat about what you're doing tonight, who's on the books, those things, or whether you guys have like a pre-shift opening or staff meeting.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I think those opportunities, or talking to your kids before they leave, you're imparting that wisdom, and you are being represented by those people as they step out into either represent your business or if your children open to the world. And I say that because I have mentors that share stuff with me that I feel like I go out into the world and then spread that message as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, yesterday, Max, my middle boy, we had our first parent meeting for this big rep hockey team that he plays on now. And, he's only 9 years old. He's just a kid, but now he's like in this whole other level of professional sort of sporting, and it's certainly not professional, but they have to show up with a suit and tie. They got to have dress shoes. They got to have dress pants.
Right.
They got to show up, an hour and 15 minutes before the game and have a warm up and then go through the whole process. And yesterday we had a team parent meeting after practice.
Okay.
And, it was like an hour of all the parents sort of chatting. And a couple of the parents were sharing these videos online. One's called The Car Ride Home. Where how you engage your child after the sport, how you engage them before the sport, is so crucially important, because you're putting thought into their brain
100%.
before they get on the ice, get in the classroom, get on with their day, how they impact or influence the people around them. And the part of the Car Ride Home video was they flipped it, where the child was yelling at his parent as she was making dinner.
Right.
And I thought it was really interesting to me because, like, I cook dinner, almost every day of the week for my sons and my wife. And usually they're in the kitchen with me and they're sitting around, we're chatting about the day and things like that. And I thought to myself, I wonder if one of my sons started yelling at me or started like berating me for what was on the plate. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they do, but the script was flipped, right? It's like people don't often bark at you after you've made a meal, but they always have an opinion. And so I think those opinions are valid. There's a safe place to be able to share your opinion, so to speak. But it just really made me think about setting the stage, creating a roadmap for where that person in my life today is going in their own journey.
Yeah. Interesting paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Can we talk about parenthood for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Parenthood and the always difficult overarching term balance.
Yeah. Like for point, my son last night on the way back from Victoria, we took the ferry back. I had to go to Victoria for the day to work, and they went to my in-laws. And we're coming back, and my son in the back seat is just like, I wish there was a way I could just turn off the internet at 5 o'clock every day, so you would pay more attention to me.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's 7.
Wow.
That's powerful, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like,
And
he
you
just
have
wants-
incredible balance. I mean, first, congrats to Brad on the birth of your
thank you
your
so
new
much.
child.
Yeah.
I have 3. Jed has 2. Parenting is the best job that I have. It's the most
100%.
important job that I have. And gosh, I hate iPads and you know how it steals time from me, how it steals time from my middle boy more specifically. But my oldest boy, who's 20, I mean, that's how he consumes all his media, all of it. Like he rarely watches, you know, television.
Yeah.
You know, he watches everything on his phone, and you know, it's a scary thing, man. I can't even imagine what it's going to look like in another 10 years, but I wish we could turn the internet off too.
Yeah, you know, I find they regulate, my kids regulate themselves fairly well, 7 and 10.
Right.
You know, they definitely could go down the rabbit hole sometimes. You know, my son has his way of putting his tablet under his arm and walking into the bathroom and being there for 25 minutes, just like an old man, right? But they're
I think I did that this morning.
That's his version of the newspaper.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's his version of hiding that from his
Yeah,
dad
yeah,
and
exactly.
doing
Not
it
being
in
visible,
a place.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like, dude, where are you, Tay? Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, like, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, that balance is tough. Like sometimes, you know, like I find social media is something that I have to carve that time out for our business.
Yeah.
It's not a part of my everyday. And so yesterday on the ferry, and what he was getting at, you know, I spent the entire ferry ride, you know, organizing images and getting things, you know, cropped and ready for the week so that I can easily load it into later and just have it go.
Right.
And that consumed the ferry ride, where he was bored in the truck and wanted me to play with him and play Uno and do
Right.
different things, right?
Right.
And I get that, but I needed to put that time there so it wasn't taking snippets of my time throughout the week. I needed to balance that time. 'Cause
Sorry, finish your thought.
I just knew I was taking it from him there.
Right.
And he had things to do. He just was bored. He wanted me to
He
play
wanted,
with me.
he wanted stimulation from his
Yeah,
dad.
exactly. His sister was busy. His mom was doing things, and he just wanted me to play with him. I get that. But, you know, what I try to do throughout the week, or especially in the morning, I try to take them to school every morning. So I have those snippets of time throughout the week that are always there for them.
I think it's the biggest challenge we face. I honestly do. I can't, you know, time is absolutely so precious, and, you know,
Valuable.
there is just not enough of it. And, you know, you got to rest, you got to sleep, you got to get exercise, you got to fuel your body. You know, you have to nurture who you are to enable yourself to be the best person that you can be. And, you know, I've listened to your podcast for a while. Obviously, a lot of people have the same message, and we're all realizing that that's the same journey, the same battles that we're all facing.
I find the exercise one is really funny for me, though, because I have much less of an issue taking time away from my family to go do exercise than I do to sit on the computer for an hour and be like, oh, I got to get this done. Even though that's critical in my business, I have to, if they're there, I can easily turn that off. But what I find for them is if I don't commit to myself to stay fit and active and continue, you know, I make sure I marathon and I do different sort of races throughout the year, and I stick to those so it keeps me honest, then I'm not the person I want to be to them. Right. And I find that I'm much happier to steal, you know, an hour or 2 or 3 or wherever my day is away from them. And they've come to a point now of being 7 and 10 that they get that. They're like, oh, Dad's doing that, and we need to do that sometime today too. Chloe's got to go dance, Taylor's got to go to swimming, and they need to find their time for exercise too. So it's something that's become an important part of our family unit to make sure that
I think
carve the
I think
time.
that's a great point, and something that I've started instituting in my life. I haven't perfected it yet, and I don't think there's such thing as perfection, but I've started organizing my life in what I call blocks. So time blocks, where I literally put in a time block for my family. I literally put in a time block for social media. And when I'm doing that, I'm just doing that.
Yeah,
and when
smart.
it's family time block, it's just family time block.
Yeah.
And it's defined. Like, what does that look like? Like, it's a check-in with my partner, it's time with my daughter, you know, those kind of things. And I have like housekeeping time block and fueling time block, which is usually eating or prepping food, those things. So I have found personally that taking a conscious effort to look at my day and block it out so that if my phone rings and I'm recording a podcast, I'm not reaching for my phone.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just interesting how there's certain times in our days where we are so focused or so committed to the task. Like when you guys, I'm assuming when you're exercising, if you get an email, you're not stopping your run and answering the email.
No,
right?
unless Ned's texting, then I stop.
Does he have a special ring?
Yeah, it's a special Ned.
Well,
thing.
I
He
think
has a special phone.
the listeners or viewers wouldn't know this, but Jed and I are best friends, and we've been, that for almost our entire lives. And so, a couple funny stories about how we do engage each other. We see each other 4 or 5 times a week usually, but a couple days ago I was on a long bike ride. And I have my phone in my the back of my jersey, and I feel it vibrating 5,500 times as I'm on the climb up Cypress, and I get to the top of Cypress, and if I was at work I would check every single time it buzzes, unfortunately, but I don't when I'm working out. And I get to the top, and it was him. And he's like, "What are you up to today?" And I said, "Well, I'm at the top of Cypress. Can you come to the store? We need to chat about something." And so, of course, I did. But I think back. I remember when my dad got his first cell phone, like a long
Was it one of those,
time
like,
ago. It was the huge
Zach
brick,
Morris,
right? Like this kind of thing, the big brick. And how our lives have so changed in such a short period of time. I mean, we grew up, shirtless,
Shoeless.
on Vancouver Island, shoeless,
Yeah.
in the forest, in the trees, in the muck,
At the beach.
At the beach, just like in it, right? In the world that we are so fortunate to live in. And I think we have to push harder to get our kids back to that, because, sports are one thing. There's so much structure in sports often, but we didn't have structure. We just kind of like went and kept ourselves busy doing whatever the hell we were doing.
Yeah, it was the late 70s and early 80s. Our parents were preoccupied with other stuff.
Smoking weed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Listening to the Melissa Etheridge.
Getting divorced.
Exactly.
Yeah, getting divorced. Yeah, that's
Right.
a good one too. Yeah.
I mean,
oh, hell yeah.
it was, but we have such similar journeys. But I just wish sometimes I could like put my kid in the middle of, the forest and like tell him to find his way home. Like, and I don't mean that in a like bad parenting way, but like, this is a skill you need to have, is to try and navigate the world without being told exactly how to do it, and the structure within is helpful for us as fathers and business owners and, husbands and partners, et cetera, leaders, advocates, educators, whatever you want to say. But we forget often that we just need to get lost sometimes and figure out
100%.
how to like peel back the layers of, okay, I gotta sort this out. There is no roadmap. I gotta sort this out.
You can't Google it.
You can't Google it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, like when Ned and I were 10 years old, we would go for hours and hours and hours. Either, I lived out in Deep Cove, so we would go over on the island, so we'd be out in the bush forever, or he lived close to downtown Victoria, and our parents had no idea where we were. Right?
Yeah.
There was no phones. There was we wouldn't ever check in, and we'd be gone for hours. And
Isn't that
hours.
amazing though? Like literally no idea.
No idea.
But we didn't think about it. We didn't.
No. There's no question. Just be home by 5 or whatever, and we would try to figure that out.
But would that float with you guys now? Would you fly with that if your kids just took off?
No, man. On the way here this morning, I heard on CBC some kid got abducted from New Westminster. Like,
Yeah. So it's
there's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way. I'm terrified to. The world is no more unsafe than it was back then.
Correct,
I
yeah.
just think that there's a different. I don't know if the world that we live in is more engaged through media or social media.
Well,
or
it
what
happened
have
back then. You didn't hear about it in 30 seconds, though, right?
True.
Like,
Right.
the thing, like, it just goes viral.
Yeah.
And we just didn't know.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, as a new father, I don't know what my daughter's name is Lena. I don't know what it's going to look like when she is your children's age, or our age. But yeah, I do have hope that there will be that correction in the way in which we live our lives. But I think it starts with us.
It's the availability of the information, though. Like what I was just saying, that the same type, or even abductions of children has actually even gone down since the 70s.
Right.
But the availability of information to know what's happened in
Right.
Abbotsford or in Surrey or in Toronto or whatever, we hear about it within seconds, right? I get a push notification from CBC on my phone.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it just happens instantly.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
What changing speeds a little bit. Can we talk about positives about the world we live in today? And let's just say we'll stay with the kite of social media.
Yeah.
What
I would say the flip of exactly what you're saying is the availability of social media and the amount that they can learn so quickly.
Right.
They absorb, like kids are sponges, right? And we were sponges, so we absorbed our environments when we were kids. And we learned lots about the environment, and we, went and broke rocks in half and looked at fossils and so on and so forth when we were kids. But, I watch my kids and how they absorb information and what becomes normal to them, and then how they're able to absorb another layer of information. My daughter's capacity for understanding at 10 and her emotional ability to create relationships with all different types of people, different languages or religions or so on and so forth, because she's so much more understanding of the world around her.
Right.
Like you think of us at 10, we knew our microenvironment so well, in what were we, in 1983 when we were 10 years old, and we knew what we knew just within that tiny little bubble. My daughter's bubble is massive.
It's huge.
It's huge, right? She has kids in her classroom that are from, Israel and Russia and Beijing and Indonesia, and she knows all about them and where they come from and their languages and their religions and how they interact in their families at home and why their food is a certain way when they come with their lunches. And, to that, it's just quite normal to her because the world is so much smaller, because the information, she can look it up on a map instantly where they come from. They can show her, they can Google Maps, show where they lived when they were in Indonesia, and she can make a sense of that really, really quickly, which, then for her to be like, oh, I want to travel, I want to go places, that's not intimidating and weird, right? Where, in the 70s it was, or 80s.
We live in a pretty phenomenal place and time right now. We have access to, some extraordinary things, globally inspired, locally created. That is what Vancouver is all about. That's certainly what, British Columbia, maybe even Canada is all about. And aren't we lucky to live in a safe place and, have a roof over our head and fuel in our belly? I'm married to a publicist, so media is very, very, very important to, our world and our livelihood. I'm a chef at the end of the day. I didn't go to school to be a well-known chef. I went to go to school because I love cooking. But, I often think, like, I grew up in Victoria, then I grew up in Vancouver. East Van, to me, as a West Side guy, was like a different world.
Right.
I didn't travel. I went to Hawaii lots growing up, but I didn't travel to Toronto until I was like 23. And I remember when I moved to Toronto, I didn't know the cultural impacts and influence of different races was extraordinary. I knew white and Chinese people. That was it. That's sort of all I knew in Vancouver.
Right.
As you go to Toronto and you're just like, holy smokes. There's all kinds of different races, Somalian, Jamaican, black, white, orange, yellow, green. It was just this extraordinary sort of tapestry of influence, I guess. But for me, as a chef, I think the positives that I face right now with Jed is that we really realize that we need to dive deeper into education. We need to dive deeper into education when it comes to our food. My family's struggling with some health issues right now, and food is a big part of that wellness. That's what cook culture is all about. That's certainly, what my ethos of sustainability is all about. And so the positives to me are like, I can't wait to get to work, not so much work today, but like continue the work that we're doing. In sharing that message.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the glue which keeps, when you have close friends and you're like, what keeps you as a friendship really tight, and people are always interested how close of friends Ned and I are. And really one of the biggest things outside of our history together and how we have so many similarities and we can rely on each other for, dumping whatever we got at each other. It's the glue of, hey, can we do something together that makes a difference? And what is that? And his movement within sustainable seafood and what he's done as a champion in our country and really one of the leaders, especially within his own field, absolutely the runaway leader within that, of what he's done to bring awareness around sustainable seafood and the way in which our lakes, waterways are treated. But, further than that, we talk constantly of like, okay, well, there's some bigger challenges around the food system that our kids face that we deal with every day on an individual basis. And then, in our micro communities and then in a macro world, and what can we do as this phenomenal facility that we have as 3 different teaching kitchens in 3 different cities, what can we do and what can the Ned Bell brand do to help make a positive impact? And that's something we talk about all the time.
What does that look like for you? If you can, I don't want to make you guys go short on this, but What does that mean, impact for you? What are you looking to achieve? Like, what does your impact, Ned, look like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We're talking magic wand situation.
Well, I mean, I grew up. I started cooking when I was 14, washing dishes like so many chefs. Trevor, I think you started working,
Yep.
Around the same time. Jed did as well. Most of us start in our work life in and around that point, of our I guess journeys. Are you asking me what success looks like? Like, I don't think success is an end goal. I think that, I personally have come from the other side of our industry with, alcohol abuse and being overweight and, really thinking that the most important thing and the only thing was trying to be the best chef in the world. And now I realize I couldn't care less about that. And like what I'm more focused on now is how do we have an impact on future generations, whether it's the health of our oceans, whether it's the health of our food system, whether it's the health of access to, whether it's affordability, whether it's, all the things that are facing us in this world that are overwhelming at times, And so success for me is long term. Success for me is not the next decade. It's the next 100 years. It's, I may be one of the leaders in my space currently, but I'm only here because of, chefs like Rob Clark who led the charge before me. I hope that we can influence the next generation of young culinarians to do a great job. And culinary education and what cook culture is doing, even in its name, cook and culture, we are trying to influence culture through cooking.
Yeah.
We're trying to influence food in, or people's understanding of food through how they feed their bodies, their community, their region. And I'm the product of a great home economics teacher. Like, I can't remember the last time I don't even know if Max has a home economics teacher, my middle son at school. And that to me is sad. That to me is something that we need to focus more on with the government of this province, this countries, south of the border is, how can we eat better? Real food heals, man. Like real food heals. Yep, we all know that. And, whether you're getting sick from cancer, whether you're getting sick from, all kinds of other diets that are influencing us, I think we just need to eat better food, but we need to know how to do that.
Do you want to add to that, Jed?
Yeah, something in which what Ned was alluding to is that it's a big thing. It's a really big thing. When we develop cooking classes and we teach cooking classes, or when Ned does special series of classes that are more of a real interaction with the community, come in and meet Ned and listen to his message. Most of our classes are come in and learn this one skill.
Right.
Our overall opportunity every time is, can we get somebody to be cooking more at home simply, or can we get them to be cooking better food at home? And what's that end goal in that? And it's such a difficult but then simple thing where most people are looking for, they want to lose some weight, or they want to eat more vegetables, or they want to cut down on the meat consumption, or they know they eat too much fried food, or there's always something that somebody wants to do. I don't think I've ever met one person that's like, yeah, I'm perfect. I mean, the way I eat is just
that's why the diet industry is so large.
Yeah, exactly.
And the pharmaceutical industry at the same time.
The medical system, right? We deal with a lot of people that come to us and be like, hey, simply got to lose 20 pounds, or I was just diagnosed with pre-onset diabetes, and my dad died of diabetes after he lost both of his legs below the knee, right? And we have these stories every single day in each one of our stores where that's that interaction. And people are like, I don't know what to do. Because
no one taught them.
Nobody taught them.
Because there's no, and there's no literally support. We're not teaching our kids how to eat properly. I mean, us as parents are.
Yeah.
But the society isn't.
We have sorry.
I was going to say that to me is kind of shocking and
disappointing.
Really disappointing.
We have a really interesting class. It's called Cooking with Foods to Fight Cancer. We call it
cool.
We call it the cancer class. It's a preventative class, and it's based on reducing inflammation and increasing antioxidants.
Right.
And really interesting in how it became was that in Victoria, before we had expanded to Vancouver, the Victoria General Hospital had hired a new lead of oncology at VicGen. And so he showed up in Victoria from Toronto, didn't have an apartment set up, came to buy some cookware, and then was like, oh, you teach classes. That's interested. Started taking a bunch of classes. Took like half a dozen different classes from us. Then came to me one day after, I'd met him and he became really comfortable in our space. And he brought me a book. And he's like, these two guys are buddies of mine at the University of Montreal. They just made this book. I need you to make a class for this book, because I have absolutely zero resource when people come and we've diagnosed them with whatever their cancer is. We have all these pamphlets and we have all these things to say to them, but we have nowhere to show them how to
Nothing
cook.
tangible.
Nothing tangible that we can, in the entire city of Victoria, there's nowhere to send them to teach them how to cook the way we're telling them to eat.
Can we shout that book out?
Yeah, so it's Cooking with Foods. Sorry, what's the name of it? It's changing its name.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So Cooking with Foods to Fight Cancer.
Okay.
And yeah, sorry, I should have
No,
had it with
that's
me.
fine. It is amazing to me. Sorry to interrupt. It is amazing to me how many people, even some of my friends that are, I have a good friend of mine who's vegan. I won't say his name, so he'll probably get embarrassed. But he's a vegan, but he just doesn't know. He doesn't know how to cook.
Right.
And
there's a lot of unhealthy vegans.
And he's relying on everyone else in these restaurants to feed him, and a lot of times it's probably not the best sources and the best food. So
food is the one thing that connects every human.
I was
period, full stop.
Yeah,
right.
I was going to say that. I don't want to get off on a diatribe here, and I'll just say this: we as a society, I think we totally underestimate the power of food, like what it actually can do.
Yeah.
Like picture this table with our families and food, and what can be done and what can be shared with that, and using that as this catalyst to bring us together in conversations and thoughts and theories. And I'm just so inspired by meeting people like yourselves that are affecting change in the industry. And albeit we are a very small part of this very large machine, but this is what it is. It takes that little tiny domino first, right?
Well, hopefully more powerful.
Jed and I, we lost touch for a bunch of years as I went in, on my own journey. Moved away for 5 years, lived in Toronto, lived in Calgary. We didn't speak once in 10 years. And
this is before Facebook.
This is before Facebook. But you know what brought us back together? Food.
Yeah. It
right?
always
Like
will. Yeah.
I heard that he bought this. I think I was on my ride across Canada at the time in 2014.
Around Toronto.
And I saw something popped up on Facebook. Jed Grieve just bought Cookworks, which is the store that used to be here before Cook Culture. And I was like, oh man, that's so cool. I'm going to reach out to him. So I reached out to him, and our lifetime sort of washed away, and like right back to, thick as thieves, like right back to where we were when we were teenagers and young kids, young boys trying to, navigate this difficult life. We've had similar journeys, ourselves, struggles within, but food brought us back together.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. And it's amazing to me as well. I'm lucky enough to have a very small power circle of people like that, where I don't need to be constantly checking in, but you bet your ass when we connect, it is like deep, it's meaningful, and you can be you, I can be me, and let's just get this going. And generally it's 9 times out of 10 over a meal.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Changing speeds a little bit. You guys are both happily married with beautiful families.
Absolutely. Beautiful wives.
Hypothetically speaking, you and your wives are forming a 4-piece band.
5-piece band for him,
5. Yeah. Okay. 5. The dynamics are changing a bit here.
Yeah.
5-piece band, if you will. Sure. Yeah. Who is playing what instrument? Who is on the drums, keeping the beat? Who is lead singer? What is the dynamic when the 4 of you or the 5 of you get together? What is that like? Who's doing what?
Oh, it's easy for me to answer. Maybe I'll let Jed go first.
Well, it's interesting. So Ned and I both have similarities again in how things are. So, Kate, Ned's wife, who's in PR, they work very closely together on a lot of things, a lot of initiatives. So it's interesting. And my wife and I work together within our business. So it's a little bit more formal. Like my wife and I both have a position within Cook Culture, and we're under the same umbrella, where, Ned and his brand and the way in which he works is just a little bit different, but also very, very similar. There's the same influence.
Just
the same
what instrument are you
come
play,
on.
Jeez.
Quit stalling.
So what I'm saying with that, because I know the answer to his question.
Okay, how about
that's
this?
Where I'm going.
Why don't you answer for Ned?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. So definitely the drums for his wife.
I would agree, but I would actually say my wife's more like Quincy Jones. I think she's like the executive producer.
Right.
She's like,
but she has to play a tool. If you
Is she
have to
wear-
she's
play.
the drums.
Is
She's
she
the
wearing?
drums,
Is
for
she wearing
sure.
a god awful suit as well?
Yeah, well, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I look at Quincy
No,
Jones.
she's got
as
beautiful
like
style. There's no
Yeah.
way she's wearing a
conductor of,
That's awesome.
of, Michael Jackson.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the lead singer. My son Jet is probably, just he's like Flea from Red Hot Chili
Hot
Peppers.
Chili
He's
Okay.
just hammering on the guitar and just flying all over the stage.
Okay.
Max is probably my middle son is probably who's the good lead guitarist for U2? The guy that
the Edge.
Edge, right?
Right.
Max is probably Edge. Because every once in a while he wants to be sort of the main guy up front also.
Right.
I'd say I'm Bono and
You're
With-
totally Bono.
Are you wearing the glasses
He's
too?
got-
oh for sure wearing
Need
the
to find
glasses.
you some yellow safety
Definitely
glasses.
Bono and then my older son Finn's probably like playing the piano or something in the background. He's a really quiet guy and he always says to me like often because I'm like, man, we need to talk more. Like, what's up? He's like, I'll talk to you when I have something to say.
Whoa.
Yeah.
He's very stoic.
He's 20. Well, Finley had a different upbringing. I mean, he was born when I was quite young and basically, not basically, completely raised by a single mom. I was very engaged and very involved, but I wasn't always there. I lived in different cities. But, I think when you have 3 different experiences with your children, and you're a different father. Like I literally feel like
Yeah.
I'm a different dad to each one of those boys.
For sure.
Because
Yeah.
I've come at their upbringing at a different point in my life.
I was actually looking for just you and your wife and you and your wife, the 4 of you forming a band. But I'm glad you brought your kids into it as well. So now
Oh, I
understand.
see. I see.
No,
I
no.
see. I
And
see.
that's why I have to say when you said 5, I thought there was like some mysterious woman in
Or
Ned's life.
mysterious man.
And then I started thinking like, does Ned have another wife? And is
That's
this something we're just
funny.
like breaking this on the show right
Yeah.
now? So no, I appreciate where you took it with the kids. So we'll do the same for you, Jed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
your family that lives in your home,
Yeah.
if you guys were going to form a 4-piece
a
band,
4-piece band. Yeah.
who's
No,
doing what?
Definitely my wife has.
Can I interrupt though?
Yeah.
Because I actually like this question even more now. Now I think that we're the Beatles.
Okay.
And are you McCartney or are you Lennon? Because I think I'm McCartney, but
you're totally McCartney.
You're Lennon,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Totally.
Our wives are like
Who's Yoko?
Yoko.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're
our
together.
wives are Yoko together for sure because they're a little bit Yoda and a little bit sort of like awesome in all ways.
Yeah.
And who's the other dude? Ringo? Is Ringo on
Yeah.
the drums? Is it
Yeah.
Ringo?
Ringo's on the drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ringo's on the drums. Who would that be? I
Can
don't know.
Can we bring in like a third party? You guys, is there a third to the Ned and Jed crew?
Yeah. I don't know. The most dynamic character in our life growing up was Ned's mom.
Okay, so Ned's mom is Ringo.
That's mom.
Is your mom still with us?
She is.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
no,
shout out. What's your mom's name?
My mom's name is Victoria.
Shout
Yeah.
out to Victoria.
Yeah.
You're now on the
Just so
drums.
you know, she will start commenting on all of your
Social
Facebook
media.
posts
Yeah.
now. She'll listen to your podcast,
Yeah.
have a comment about
know
every
what?
guest. She'll be
Perfect.
like, "I love that Brad guy. He's really great. I love his podcast."
Yeah, and
Thanks,
something that
Victoria.
I'll share with you that I've actually got to give these back to you, Tori, are pictures of Ned and I when we were kids. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
these little kind of grainy
Yeah.
square photos
Yeah.
of like us.
I
at-
cherish those, man.
They're amazing. There's
Yeah.
us doing stuff outside. There's us at a birthday party. They're
Pizza
fantastic.
Pie Man.
The Pizza Pie Man, that was a place in Victoria when we were
Okay.
growing up. Yeah, I'll share some of those with you.
That'd be so great to put up on
Yeah.
the media.
Yeah.
One thing I always ask on this show, and what's probably my 2 favorite questions, and it's the only 2 that I really repeat with every episode. This is the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So I have for you 2 your half a dozen have-tos. Stay with me here. So there's 2 of you. We're going to divide it down the middle, so 3 each.
That makes it easy. I can't go higher than
So I need from you, and you can kind of go back and forth here, play tennis a bit. Something you've experienced in your life, whether it is a meal you've eaten, a job you've had, a trip you've taken, an album you listened to, a concert you've seen, a book you've read, a girl you've dated, whatever. Something you've done that you feel like the listeners have to try. Like, you guys need to go out and you need to do this. So who wants to start off with their version of the half a dozen have-tos?
I'll start. I think that, for me, as the journey that I've been on the last bunch of years, the last decade of sustainability has really taken me to some extraordinary places around the world. But the place that's left me with the most impact has been the northern part of our country. So last year I got to fly across the top of Canada. We went to Whitehorse, Yellowknife, Rankin, Iqaluit, Nunavut, Churchill, Manitoba. It was an extraordinary journey. And the one thing that I remember so palpably, and I close my eyes and I can feel the sort of experience, was we're in Iqaluit, which is like being on the moon. If you've never been to Iqaluit, it's like literally being on the moon. And we're in a community kitchen. So, this community center where this kitchen, was basically the largest kitchen in the entire community of only a couple hundred people. And all of a sudden, an Inuit hunter walked in the back door. And if you've ever seen an Inuit hunter in real life, it immediately reminds you of like, oh, because you've only seen those people in photos, right? So, you don't get the palpable experience of a man walking in the back door, covered in snow, wearing all his garb, extraordinary traditional clothing that keeps him, thriving in that community. And he brought in a fresh ring seal, which I had never had before. Okay. And so ring seal, it's a marine mammal. We got to experience this fresh ring seal, but we started to take the ring seal apart. And as we were taking the ring seal apart, he was saving all the offal, all the innards, all the really important parts that we would discard. We as Southern Canadians would discard, because of course we only really like primal cuts of meat if we do eat meat. And he saved all of those awful cuts for the elders of the community. And that was the first time that I actually felt myself inside something so deeply that I hadn't experienced before. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it just reminded me of experience new things. Like that. Put yourself in a place you've never been before. You hear often scare yourself every day in some capacity. I don't know about that, but experience new things. And why not in your own country?
Yeah. It's a beautiful country. Jed, over to you.
So mine quite different than Ned's for my first one. When I was growing up, my parents divorced, similar to Ned's, when I was 11 years old. And my dad moved over to Vancouver in 1986. And
just so you know, my parents divorced when I was 12.
Right.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And Jed and I have often realized if there might be a different connection between us, because there's very similar parallels to our
Maybe it's that other wife that you have as well.
Yeah. I don't know, there's something strange when people
Jed and Ned.
They get them confused. They think a lot of times that Ned
for sure.
We look
Jed
similar.
Aquaculture, that Ned has these kitchen stores in the communities. They just, they see me, they see
association,
him. Yeah. So that's a whole different story that we don't have the answer to, because that's somewhere deep in the 80s. Yeah. However, when I was growing up, my dad was absent for the most part, emotionally and physically. And I started to kind of take, different paths, different parallels, and had some amazing mentors, male mentors, that really helped me understand at each time of my life what I should be doing. And I was a total shithead growing up. I went in the wrong direction constantly and made, if I could have made a worse decision, I don't think I could have, right? And I spent a lot of my teenage years making the wrong choices and going in the wrong direction. However, I had these men that it turned out to be men mostly. My mom was an amazing influence also, and is an amazing person, was there for me and loved me dearly all the time. That gave me a good sense of myself. But when I was in my early 20s and I'd started to get a sense of business and started to put my energies towards business and not just partying all the time, I met a man called James McKenzie. And I met him, and within a very short amount of time, I realized that he was a guy that I wanted to know and I wanted to spend time with. And I asked him straight out, just like asking somebody to marry you or go on a date, will you be my mentor? And he said to me, at this point in my life where I'm at within my career, that it was very successful, he's like, I'm honored, and I couldn't, be more thankful of you asking me. So we formed a formal relationship of mentor-mentoree. And he, within the first year or so of us spending a large amount of time together, he ended up giving me a book that was called Good to Great by a guy called Jim Collins.
Great book.
Amazing book that really made me change my focus on I've always been an optimist, and I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. But the focus in that book, which was so amazing, is that it took 11 different corporations or 22 different corporations, and it compared them to themselves. One did what the market did on normal, and one far exceeded. And there were a lot of things that were similar, and they were over a long amount of time. That it wasn't one person, wasn't one CEO or whatever that did this massive difference between the marketplace. And it was the culture, it was the things in which they had ingrained into the businesses. And he was able to then dissect that and make it capable of the 1, 2, 3s of how it worked. But it ended up showing me that, you can have an extraordinary business if you want it to be extraordinary. You've got to do the work and you've got to put things in order, but your business can be anything that it wants to be. And that book really opened my eyes to that. So that's the one thing that I would say, that's been a pivotal moment in,
cool.
in my
Great book.
life. Yeah, amazing book.
Ned, back to you, number 2.
Well, that's a great story. I mean, it just actually I got while I was listening to you there, Jed, I realized like how important the male mentors of my early teenage years were to me. And my mom was the one who put those men in front of me. My parents divorced. We lived in Vancouver. My dad was in Victoria. And she forced me to spend time with these very successful older men who, I don't know, I can't remember anything other than just the place that they hold still to this day in my journey, in my foundation building. Okay. I think that we have to continue to realize that effort equates results. And if you want to make sure that you are going to get where you want to go, you got to put in all the effort and not just half-assed, but you got to put in all the effort. And, I think the journey that we are all on, yourself, Brad, Jed, myself as dads and as men and as partners and as, business owners or leaders, we got to continue to realize that people are watching us, and the effort that we put into our everyday has influence on the people that watch us. And, I think for me, I just want to continue to dive deep, as deep as I can, into the things that are important to me, because I get so much from that. But it's really about the effort, laying it all on the table. If I'm having a bad day and I jump on my bike and I ride for 3 to 5 hours, I left all those worries behind me. They're all on my back wheel. They're all, like when Jed's trail running for 4 to 10 hours as he does as an ultra marathoner, it is very similar, the journey that we have been on. And I think what comes down to our success is the effort that we put in.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well put.
So when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, so something was really different between our households growing up with Ned's household and my household is that my mom was a woman from the earth, right? She had moved from Eastern Africa and come to North America, and she was repulsed by what was going on in the North American food system and in the system in general. And both of our parents' groups were advocates, and they had their opinions about things. But my mom really wanted to affect social change. So she was part of the women's liberation movement. She was part of getting acknowledgement for, at that time it was only called gay rights. We would champion these things, and I would go in rallies with her as a small kid downtown Victoria and walk to the legislature and all the things that happened today. We were doing that back in the late 70s and early 80s. And she was a woman that was just like, this shouldn't be this way. North American food should not be this way. This makes no sense. What's going on? This is going to kill people. And this was her message. It seems very in vogue now. But this was going on in the 70s. And she wasn't shy about this. She started a food co-op where she would buy bulk cheeses and nuts in bulk and be able to share them with people, so people could afford organic, local cheeses and nuts that were brought in bulk. She was very much about recycling everything. All of our diapers were cleaned in the washing machine and put back. We didn't wear Pampers. And so this was just a way of being, and I didn't really think much of it. And I became a teenager and lived a regular teenage life. And I didn't eat meat until I was 15, but and I didn't think anything different of being raised a vegetarian child, except that I was treated like I was like purple by most of my friends' parents, right? Yeah. Like, Tori and Barry, Ned's dad, knew how to deal with me because I was there so much, but, a lot of other didn't. And so what had happened with that influence from my mom, being the woman that she was in those years, that when I then started to get, my shit together and started to realize, okay, I'm going to have kids and have my own responsibility, it became very, very easy for me to ground myself in that same place, right?
100%.
And my comfortable place. Like, we are now, vegan at home, and we're vegetarian out. And that's very easy for me, very, very comfortable, because that's my normal from being a kid. And so I'm extraordinarily thankful to my mom, and how at the time, what a champion she seemed to be at that time. And what she ingrained into me as, my core values, that helps me position my family and also our business. So when Ned and I do get together, he sees his extraordinary experience within the industry and understands things that I don't very well.
Right.
But we can come together so clearly together on that, being like, we have to do more. We have to, right? He sees it from what goes on within his advocacy around the oceans and waterways. I see it where people come in and are making choices around food because they don't know what else to do.
Right.
And so that drive together is what really brings us together.
I remember growing up in Victoria, and I think it was my parents who actually made me, and I don't know that they did this deliberately, but they might have. But Victoria was weird. And we celebrate weird now.
Yeah, that's true.
But back then, weird wasn't cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, cool was what every other white Anglo-Saxon Protestant was doing, which was trying to follow the man and his, not hers, his journey as to what success looked like. And now, of course, Victoria is still leading edge, still at the tip of the sword, influencing our industry, our communities in such an extraordinary way. And I guess we need to continue to wrap our arms around that weird is cool.
The coolest.
Coolest, right? Being different is the coolest. When I told my grandfather I wanted to be a chef, he was a surgeon and president of BC Medical Association. So, very traditional sort of upbringing and journey. When I told him I wanted to be a chef, he looked at me like I had a hole in my head. Like, that's the guy carving roast beef at the country club. Like, what do you mean? That's not a job. That's certainly not a career. Now, I have the coolest job in the world.
Heck yeah.
Like,
you
I
do.
love what I do.
Yeah.
And it keeps me going. It keeps me, passionate. It keeps me on top of whatever game I want to be on top of. And to me, it's about embracing weird, like being okay with, I think I was actually the one who brought you to McDonald's the first time. Like, I literally do think that I was the one who brought him to McDonald's.
broke him.
Yeah.
And that at 15 years old, it was like, let's go have a burger, right? And luckily he's broken that addiction, and we joke about it all the time. And yes, I am passionate about sustainable seafood. That is certainly the world that I live in right now. But more importantly, it's not just the seafood; it's the ocean. It's the lungs of our planet. It's the healthy lakes, oceans, and rivers across this country that thrive our communities and our regions and our provinces and our territories. And so, as I look ahead to the journey that not only we're going to be on at Cook, continue to be on within Cook culture and within our own careers individually, within our own families, it's about paying as much attention to this small community that we get to call home.
Yeah, definitely.
And if we can influence that and put as much effort into that as possible, people will start to look at us, the arms of the octopus, right?
Yep.
How can we reach out and get more people on this journey? I don't know that I'll ever be a vegetarian, but I know that I lead a plant-based diet. I just garnish with sustainable seafood.
There you go. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I
do too.
Can we go back to you for one more have-tos?
Yeah. So, this is one that I'm sure that, again, this will be probably the same sort of response from the both of us, but nothing has affected me personally. Like, my wife and my relationship with her has affected me massively, our children, that environment. But for me, selfishly, for myself, sport and my running and what I do when I hit the trail or I get out for, a half-hour run, or as Ned alluded to, much longer. It's a completely selfish, self-absorbed space that I get into that gives me time to recover, to re-energize, to think, to file, to, get rid of. And if I didn't have that time for myself, doing something strenuous that gets my heart rate up, gets me sweating, and gets me connected with other people that don't want to talk to me about what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody, when I'm in trail running, they don't care. We talk about runners and we talk about packs and which mountain we're going to climb. And that's all we sometimes talk about food and we talk about things that I have a massive passion around, but they're not interested in who I am in my day job.
Yeah.
And I love that, embrace that. And that's something that gives me a huge amount of strength in what I do. So that, and my wife has recognized this over the years, that when I get back from a 3-hour mountain run, I'm 3 times more energized than when I left.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think I always say to myself, and I bore my partner with it quite a bit, I always say motion creates emotion, right? Like
Yep.
get up and move.
Yep.
Like that's how you're going to get energy.
Yeah, a couple days ago, I was having a bad morning. You know, the kids were just like too into me. They were just like too much on me. There was too much going on. I was incredibly stressed out, and I just said to my wife, I got to go out for a quick ride. So I went for a 3-hour ride. I came back feeling like $1 million, like just feeling like $1 million. And I said to my oldest son, who was, you know, I think he might have been still sitting on the couch from when I left him previous to the 3 hours. I said, you know, man, some days, and I wasn't speaking to him, I was speaking
Holistically?
about what I had just experienced. I said, you know, man, some days when you're having a bad day and you get on the bike and you don't want to be on the bike and you're not feeling strong, but you finish the ride and you come home and you feel like $1 million, that's what today feels like. And you know what he did? He literally got up off the couch, went downstairs, got dressed, and went out for a ride.
There you go.
Because he knew I didn't tell him to do that. He just knew that he needed to feel that too. And so, you know, I think about, I love the idea of the half a dozen have-tos. I call it the 4 Fs, you know, and I don't know if food or family comes first, because I think they're actually equally important in my life.
Yeah.
Food, family, fitness, fun is the way I have to live my life every day. Because if I don't fuel myself properly, I'm not good for my family. If I'm not having fun, I'm not good for my family. If I don't get my fitness in, I'm not good for my family. But for me, it's the 4 Fs. And, you know, really making sure that I'm giving myself a safe place to be able to experience those and being okay with it.
Totally. Yeah. It's being selfish, but you need that. The next one is the half a dozen haven't yet. Something you haven't experienced yet that you want to experience in your life. I mean, you guys have done a lot. It sounds like you guys did a lot as kids. But looking forward, looking to your future, looking to your ideals, what are 3 from each of you of things you haven't experienced yet, but you are hoping to one day experience?
So when I was in my early 20s, I was extraordinarily fortunate to travel a ton. So when my parents got divorced, their divorce agreement was that my father would pay for any and all travel that we wanted and any and all education. So my sister is incredibly well educated and I'm extraordinarily well traveled. So just ridiculously fortunate. Also at a time that, you know, I didn't really know my father very well until my early 20s, or maybe when I was 18 or 19. I can't remember exactly. But he retired from Vancouver and moved to Paris, and where he decided to take up writing. And in his writing, he was doing historical novels. They were fictional novels, but all based on history around the First and Second World War. So what was really interesting, he had bought himself a army issue G-Wagon, and directly from the factory in Germany. Part of his last deal in Vancouver, he actually did some development for some land for some Germans, and he took his payment as this G-Wagon that he picked up at the factory, which was really cool. All a government issued, all with like all the type of stuff that you need to go for some extreme 4x4ing. So we then shipped it all around the world, well, around Africa and the Middle East. And we would send it to a different port city where we then fly into that port city and get it. And we travel all through Africa or the Middle East, wherever we were.
Right.
And all in all, we spent probably around 18 months going in and out different places. And so that part, plus with travel through Australia and the eastern side and the South Pacific and a lot of Europe, none of South America, and not very much into the US or even Canada. I've seen, you know, a good chunks of the world, and I'm very, very fortunate. So what thing that I'm most excited about, really, that's on the top of my mind all the time, is giving my children that.
Oh yeah.
Getting my kids to see, you know, a sunset on the Serengeti, right? Or going into the Ngorongoro crater, you know, or floating down the Zambezi River, right? You know, or, you know, and these are things in which are mind blowing, you know, and things you can compare the same things to things that we can do here in North America, but there's nothing. Africa is an amazing continent. I'm extremely fortunate to have gone to over 25 different countries through Africa. And experience the culture and the difference, because it's massively different just from Vancouver. And getting to give them that, and that's something that I can't wait to start doing.
Very cool. Ned, over to you. I haven't yet.
Yeah, you know, along those lines, I mean, I think the journey that Jed and I have been on, our parents getting divorced, I wasn't that close to my dad. Still to this day, don't continue not to be all that close to my father. And he didn't really influence my adolescent life. He was a big part of my early life. He coached all my teams, and I have fond memories of the first sort of decade of my father in my life. But beyond that, then he didn't influence me when I needed him most.
Okay.
Good point.
And I think that what I haven't yet, and I don't know that I'll ever succeed at, because I think it'll be a lifetime journey, is continue to make sure that my sons are ready to tackle the world in the way that they need to best tackle it. I have 3 boys, so I have obviously a big job ahead of me.
Definitely.
And as we look at the world currently of Me Too, and how men have been raised to be a certain way, and not have it be okay to be weird. I want to make sure that I continue to influence my boys on how to be the best man possible for the community that they are faced with, that they live with over the next 10 or 20 or 50 years. So what I haven't yet done is I haven't completed my task as a father. And I really look forward to that, because, I rode my bike across Canada in the summer of 2014 to start a foundation called Chefs for Oceans. And I thought, what an extraordinary opportunity to get my dad to drive the car, and my then 16-year-old son to come with me and be the navigator on this journey. He had to sit beside my dad uncomfortably for a very long period of time. It wasn't comfortable for them. I think women are going to rule the world, but men need to do a better job of putting themselves into a position where it's okay to be. I'm having a hard time sort of formulating my thought, but I just feel like the journey of fatherhood is something that I want to continue to dive deeper into, and making sure that my boys look back on me in their most important years and know that I was leaving it all on the table.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Back to you, Jed.
So an amazing opportunity in which we have in cook culture. So our retail side of what we do is that we sell widgets, right? You can buy a knife, you can buy a pot, you can buy a pan, and you can buy them anywhere. You can buy them online. It's not that big of an issue. We try to wrap that up in, knowledge and service and so on and so forth, that all boutique retail is responsible to do anyways. Something that's unique within cook culture, again, where Ned and I really kind of come together, is education. And we alluded to it earlier and talked a little bit about it, but I think the thing in which we haven't done yet, we now have, as of this year, earlier this year, we have 3 teaching locations, one in downtown Vancouver, one in North Vancouver, and one in Victoria. We get a couple 10,000 people per location in each year, and we educate and we connect, but there's still so much more that we want to do to help people understand their opportunities or their journey, and being able to have, as we talked about, that one-on-one conversation with people before they teach the class, and be like, okay, well, what's your biggest stress? Like, what do you want to learn? Where would you like to be in a few years from now? Is it eating less meat? Is it eating, less fried foods, or what it is? So, and you could help each individual become what they want to become, and you can facilitate that somehow. And that's something that, we talk about all the time. It's like, how do we do that on an individual basis? When we have to have, a standard pasta class that is approachable for people, and they can look at the menu and be like, oh, okay, I want to learn that. And, that becomes the norm for people. Where when we have tried to be really quite nuanced and particular about, this type of vegan food and this sort of thing, we'll have a certain amount of success, but then it peters off because not enough people are really willing to take the big leaps.
Right.
And so we know this firsthand. So it's like, well, people want to, and they need to. So, what is that? And that's that's that kind of still big question mark for me, and I know for Ned in our conversations, is like, how can we make being healthier, happier, fitter, more engaged in community? How can we make that, what can we do to make that easier for people? Because we can't make it harder. Humans don't like hard, right? We don't want it harder.
Yeah, pleasure and pain, right? So we seek pleasure, we want to avoid pain. Exactly. So when things are hard, we just go the other way.
And cooking for a lot of people is painful. We get that, and so that's why cooking classes need to be fun and approachable. When Ned educates, when he connects, he's doing it in an extraordinarily fun and engaging and exciting way, so that people get kind of encaptured by what he's saying.
I like to say that if I make something tasty and I put it in your belly, you're going to like me.
Yeah, totally.
And if you like me, you're going to listen to my message.
100%.
You know, and I mean, I had 2 BHAGs that I gave myself. In fact, a man influenced me to create 2 BHAGs as I rode across the country. What was the purpose of this journey? One was to improve accessibility to sustainability and sustainable seafood specifically over the next decade. And the other one was to create a national sustainable seafood day. But I think, you know, similar to your sort of, I don't know if it's a daily or a weekly journey when it comes to how you create blocks within your space, you need to actually have a roadmap. You need to have a
100%.
roadmap to where you're
GPS.
going. Yeah, because if you don't, you're just going to get, I mean, we're humans. We get distracted, you know,
Totally.
like we get distracted so easily. So I think for us as, you know, partners, as friends, what we haven't done yet is probably the most exciting thing. And that's continuing to educate this region, this city, these cities, this province, maybe our universe, more importantly, around the importance of eating well, not only for health, but for wellness. And I feel like that's a really unique opportunity. More importantly, maybe a responsibility that chefs,
yeah.
you know, have. And certainly Jed and I together, I think are well positioned to continue to do that.
BHAGs is big, hairy, audacious goals.
Correct.
You don't-
Again, reference
Yeah.
to Jim Collins. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
earlier.
I love it,
that.
man. I want to have big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yeah, I think, you know what? What's his name? Ray Dalio.
Yep.
Ray Dalio.
Famous investor.
Yeah, very, very
Yeah.
brilliant
Yeah,
man.
brilliant guy.
He has-
We had a book called Principles.
Yeah, Principles. Yeah, fantastic book.
Yeah.
I was reading something he was quoted on, and he has kind of 5 steps to achieving a goal. And the first one is dream big. And then before you leave the first one, dream even bigger. And then start.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But
I just,
he
that
should-
resonates
he
with
really
me so
should have
much.
put it in perspective, though. Find a business that has redonkulous margins and then dream big.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah,
I think,
because the restaurant business does not have good margins. I mean,
No.
nor does retail, quite honestly.
Sure.
But you know what? I think what we're doing isn't strictly for profit in the way that the capitalism structure exists,
Amen.
right? Like,
Amen.
I get way more out of influencing people to make better decisions, way more about having positive engagements with the people that are important to me than I ever do. Like, I couldn't tell you how much money I have in the bank right now.
Right.
I actually don't care.
Right.
Like, I literally don't care. I know that I'm very fortunate.
And then his wife looks after all.
she's at home going,
Yeah, she's at home counting it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I just, you know, I know I can always make more money because I can work harder, you know, but what I can't do is continue to, what I haven't done yet is continue to influence the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think we have a unique opportunity to do is to continue to influence the next generation. And you know, I've said it a number of times today, but really, I think food is the safest place to do it. You know, like we get to feed people for a living. What a cool place! Like, what a cool thing to do, and influence wellness in people's lives. I think that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And that kind of probably brings me to my number 3 is the thing that we haven't done yet and that I strive for in our business. And talking about margin and making money in our business, I don't want to charge for cooking classes.
Right.
I would love if all of our cooking classes were free. And there will be a time in our future where, and even in near future, there's some things that we're working on, is that there's people in our community that shouldn't pay for cooking classes and they don't pay for food at the moment, but you know, we need to be able to identify them, and we need to also have our other customers that realize that, you know, part of what they're paying for is to support that. And we're working through that at the moment. There's some amazing organizations already in this city that are doing some great things. We work with growing chefs here in Vancouver and Victoria and North Vancouver that do amazing things for kids in certain schools that need that support. That is where we do need to put that energy around that age group. But even in teenage years where kids start to really lose attention, and it's really hard to get older teenagers that aren't inspired by their parents to go to cooking classes, to come to cooking classes, and to learn how to look after themselves. Because that's where we really lose people. And then it's a generational thing. You know, we've lost them for their life, and it's only their next kids that we get that opportunity again. So, you know, something that I will do at some point in time, and it's about building this business to a point to be able to afford that, is educate a broader range of our consumers. The reality, people that can afford to come to a 3-hour, $100 cooking class have money to burn.
Right.
And it's great that they do and they learn and they're inspired, but it's not going to make a massive, massive difference to our communities. And it's about the people that can't afford to do that. We've got to somehow get in front of those people and help them.
For me, that's one of my biggest goals with this podcast and everything else I go off and do with this is impacting that change. I really do want to make good food, not just good food, like healthy, impactful food accessible. And I drove down here today. I live up on Fraser with my partner and our daughter, and I drove down East Hastings. Anyone that's listening or watching from out of Vancouver, it's daunting. But I find it very refreshing as well, driving down that street. And it just, for me, I'm challenged by it, but it also inspires me to keep going down this path and do whatever I can to affect some change. And that's a whole other podcast and a whole other probably 3 hours of conversation, if not more. But that is what I think I'm taking from you guys as well. It's not about creating a beautiful dish necessarily, and it's not about having this space for people to come and buy a knife and a pot. It goes beyond that with what you guys are doing. You're trying to impact a greater change outside.
I think it comes back to community. I just found myself thinking, like, I'm sure a lot of the people that you are interviewing for this podcast are saying very similar things. And I wonder how we can engage on a larger level, like, how do we make it? Society seems to me to be quite broken, right? Okay. And I'm curious as to if we have all these people in Vancouver that are doing extraordinary things, supporting community, starting small businesses, thriving within their own sort of spaces, but we aren't connected in any way. And I guess maybe that's where maybe social media plays a role within it, but
it's commitment and time
there's no
too.
We talked earlier about East Van Jam. I've been thinking about the woman that started Grain. This incredible
Shira and Jen,
right?
Yeah.
Better with ice cream. Fatso. The list goes on and 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 on. But how are we actually connected?
100%. The challenge is, and it keeps coming up on this podcast, and the reason I raised my hand in excitement was that's exactly the challenges. There's silos right now around this city, around this province, and there are these.
Well, everybody wants their piece, right?
Exactly.
Totally.
Exactly. So how can we and BHAGs, whatever it is for me in this podcast, maybe that is something that this podcast can facilitate.
Right.
Can facilitate a space and a platform for people to come together and affect more change. And I don't know what that looks like, but it's a great point you make, Ned, is that there are people out there doing positive things, but I think the issue is, I'm going to steal a theory from Robert Greene's 33 Strategies of War, and he talks about death ground. We don't have enough death ground in our life. Death ground is, if you don't do something, you will die. So Sun Tzu used to train his samurai warriors, and he would put them literally on death ground. He would take them to an edge of a cliff to fight another army. And if they didn't fight and win, not only would they probably die in the war, but they would fall off a cliff and die.
Right.
So it was either they succeeded or they died. And in our lives, and talking holistically as society here, there's not enough death ground. If I don't do this, there's no real
because
pain.
we're a lot of us are sheeple.
Exactly.
We're just following.
Death ground it's an interesting thing that you bring up, because we actually deal with that in our everyday, in our business, because we get people. I was talking to you about the oncologist, what we dealt with earlier.
Yeah.
So he then started sending people to us, and these were people on their death ground.
Right.
And they were so focused and they were so into what they were doing that, I have seen people from stage 3 and stage 4 cancer reverse their cancer and go into remission.
100%.
And the only way I've ever seen it done, is the support of a tremendous oncologist and the modern medical system, but it's also just that focus on themselves and who they are and where they're centered and the food that they're eating, when they're eating it, how they're eating it. And they've made these massive changes in their life because they were on their death ground.
Be fierce, right? Be fierce. Just accept nothing but success. And I think that, that's not at the detriment of other people. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're bringing the community forward. Mm-hmm. But, I often feel like we're all trying to just get our piece, right? Our piece of the successful pie, whatever the heck that is. I don't do what I do for sustainability because someone told me to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't go to culinary school to be an advocate for our oceans, right? I do it because I care about it and because I know that it's way bigger than me.
Oh, yeah.
And that is what drives me every day. And that's where the passion comes from. That's where the successes come from. That's what will continue to drive me for the next 30 years of my career, is think bigger than myself and the selfishness that exists within the human nature, or within human nature in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to wrap our heads around, though. We look at organizations like the Chef's Table here in Vancouver, or ICC over in Victoria, and trying to get some great people to do great things. They can, and they do. Like, both of those organizations are tremendous, but to be honest, it's usually the heavy lifting of a few individuals.
Exactly.
Yeah, very much so.
And that is indicative of everybody cares, and everybody pays their dues into their societies to be part of them, because they do care enough. But we're busy in our life. We're busy here and there. So, I do appreciate the idea of how can we put our arms around everybody and get everybody to go in the same direction. I feel, and what Ned and I have the strength in is that we need to put our head down and focus on what the opportunity we have right in front of us. And if people want to come along in that journey and help, fantastic.
Yeah.
But if we try to get this broad overarching kind of agreement on how we're going to solve some of these big problems, I just think we're going to just spend a lot of time talking.
I guess that's why we live in a world that there is different political parties, and we all come from different shapes and sizes and colors and creeds and cultures. But we do have a unique opportunity here in Vancouver, or here in the south coast of British Columbia, to really lead that charge. To really be, I said it before, to the tip of the sword into the important work that we need to continue to do. But I'm excited to do it. I value having the opportunity with your podcast to be able to share that message. And, obviously we just had a chat today. I don't know that we really focused too much on anything specifically, but it was a neat opportunity to just kind of lay it all on the table.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe a round 2 at some point. Maybe we'll bring on Chef Trevor Birds. He can call you Chef.
Absolutely. I mean, Trevor's 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
We are very good friends. We spend a lot of time on the bike together. He's trained for marathons. I've trained for marathons. Like, he's 10 years earlier in the journey, and so I have some influence for him, but believe me, he still influences me in a significant way also. I wish that at his age I made the decisions that he's already been making.
He's humping it out. He's
doing a great job, but I think he's learned from us, right? So
100%.
There's this extraordinary sort of leapfrogging back and forth that goes on, and having the community to be able to share that within is pretty important, and hopefully half a dozen continues to have great guests on that support each other.
Yeah, I think my last thing I'll share is always be a white belt, meaning you can never know everything. It's impossible. So, Jed, you have a lot to teach me, as I'm hoping I can teach you as well, and Ned, vice versa. That if you walk into every room, every scenario, thinking yourself as a white belt, right, there's always something to learn from everyone. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show. We've run 81 minutes and 9, 10, 11 seconds, which is fantastic, almost a record. But before I do sign off officially, I want to give you guys an opportunity to promote yourselves, your brands, and what you're doing. So where can the listeners and the viewers support you guys individually and your brands as well?
Well, for me, obviously, I'm the exec chef for the Oceanwise program across Canada. Continue to just ask the question, is your seafood sustainable? Eat more vegetables, fill up your plate with nutrient-dense plant-based ingredients. Look for my cookbook, Lure, here at Cook Culture. Upcoming cooking classes that are going to be coming up are going to be really cool. So certainly Jed and I are looking forward to, supporting the community in all the ways that we can.
Excellent.
So Cook Culture was started in 2010 in Victoria as just a kind of a seed idea that we could all get together as a group and cook in a home style environment. So that snowballed into Vancouver. We now have 3 teaching kitchens, North Vancouver, downtown, and Victoria. We teach in a very communal sense where people get together in a large kind of home kitchen and teach shoulder to shoulder with the chef. So it's not like a culinary type school where everybody's broken off into individual workstations and you aren't having the conversations around the purpose. So as I've spoken to earlier, Ned's classes are very much around who is Ned and what is this all about and what can you learn from Ned and be guided on making some really good choices around, as you were saying, plant-based foods, but also as you choose seafood and choose it appropriately. And that's what really drives Cook Culture. So Cook Culture's classes are wide ranging. We do a lot of really approachable, and our goal is to just get people to come and to start cooking. So a lot of things are very green. We don't do very many advanced style classes. because we really just want people to get comfortable in whatever the either ethnicity is or the style of that cooking. And then the other part of our business is kitchen retail. So we sell all the tools that you need to cook with at home.
Right. And reaching out on social media, you guys are at
Ned Bell on all the platforms.
Yeah, and I'm at jed.grieve on Instagram, and we're www.cookculture.com and at cookculture on all the platforms.
Cool. And if someone wanted to learn more about Oceanwise, Ned, where are they going?
Oceanwise.org, ocean.org. We really are all about education and awareness when it comes to single-use plastic, sustainability of seafood, making sure that we protect our ecosystems around the world. And Ocean Kitchen is a video series that we started as well.
Oh, cool.
Which is awesome. Really, really fantastic.
Oh, awesome.
Filmed
I'll check it out.
Filmed in Cook Culture.
Yeah, in Lonsdale.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I want to take just a brief moment to say thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for impacting change. Thank you for thinking above and beyond yourselves and looking after your communities, your families, yourselves, but again, like that bigger picture. So it's people like you that really do affect change in this industry and in this world. So I applaud you and appreciate you. And I feel very lucky that I had the opportunity to sit down and get to know you better as men today. So yeah, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your time. As I said at the start of the podcast, this is the most valuable thing we have in our lives is time. So I want to thank you so much for donating an hour and a half of yours to me in this podcast. So
anytime, man.
Yeah, thanks, Brad.
Thank you guys for tuning in and listening and viewing. As always, next week, brand new podcast, brand new episode, brand new content. That is Ned. That is Jed. I am Brad. This is the Half Dozen Hospitality Podcast. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, be good and do good. That's it.
Thank you. Cool.